Across the global technology sector, enterprise algorithms are driving an aggressive wave of mass layoffs. Companies are eliminating human roles to finance their transition toward large language models and automated systems. Thousands of tech workers have been displaced in recent restructuring efforts, with approximately half of those losses attributed directly to AI integration and efficiency measures. While many jurisdictions treat these layoffs as a market inevitability, the Chinese judiciary has emerged as a counterweight to cost-driven human replacement. This creates a conflict between two state objectives: the mandate for 90% enterprise AI adoption by 2030, and the judicial block on firing the workers replaced by that technology. China is using labor law to force corporations to absorb the social costs of technological advancement. These rulings establish a new legal threshold for employment in the current technological landscape. These constraints are enforced through judicial mandates that define the boundaries of corporate restructuring. Two landmark venues have established these precedents: the Hangzhou Intermediate People's Court, located in a major hub for the digital economy, and the Beijing Municipal Bureau of Human Resources. Both authorities rejected the corporate argument that replacing human staff with large language models qualifies as a standard change in objective circumstances. The courts ruled that enhancing profit margins via robotic systems is not a sufficient justification for unilaterally terminating a human employment contract. The judiciary has formally reclassified AI adoption as a calculated, voluntary business maneuver rather than an uncontrollable external shift. The legal battleground centers on Article 40, Section 3 of the Labor Contract Law. This statute dictates when an employer can execute a unilateral termination. Historically, the objective circumstances clause required an unforeseeable external disruption, such as a natural disaster. To legally sever a contract, the employer had to prove that continuing specific duties was impossible due to forces completely outside the company's control. This chart outlines how courts interpret legal thresholds today. Under the new standard, transitioning to AI is defined as a deliberate strategic choice, not an uncontrollable circumstance. Therefore, elective automation resulting in redundancy fails the legal threshold for unilateral termination. By categorizing AI as a voluntary move to stay competitive, the courts place automation within the realm of routine business risk. This prevents companies from using their own technological progress to bypass established labor protections. The technical reasoning behind this doctrine is illustrated by the case of Zhao, a senior technical worker at an AI firm in Hangzhou. Zhou served as a quality assurance supervisor. He ensured large language model outputs were accurate, safe, and compliant with regulatory standards. Management claimed internal model advancements rendered Zhou's role redundant. They argued that because the model could regulate its own outputs, continuing his contract was impossible. This LLM as a judge flowchart reveals the technical flaw. Base models feed into an evaluative model, but to function legally, they require a distinct human-labeled benchmark layer. A human supervisor must constantly adjust prompts to define acceptable AI behavior. The Hangzhou court ruled that filtering and ethics matching are persistent requirements that LLMs cannot guarantee, meaning the human supervisory function continues to exist. The courts recognize human intervention as a vital, legally protected criterion of production until an algorithm can perform with flawless reliability. In Zhu's case, the firm attempted to circumvent termination restrictions by offering a reassignment that included a 40% reduction in his monthly salary. Comparing Zhu's original salary to the proposed rate, the court drew a minimum economic baseline for reasonable reassignments. Forcing a massive pay cut onto a displaced worker is an abusive application of the restructuring clause. A parallel arbitration in Beijing involved Lu, a map data collector who had performed manual data collection since 2009. When the firm transitioned to fully automated navigation systems, they eliminated Lu's department and terminated his contract, citing an unforeseeable change. The Beijing arbitration panel rejected this framing, establishing the anti-risk shifting doctrine. The doctrine addresses the power imbalance in the digital economy. If enterprises capture the efficiency dividends of AI, they cannot force individual workers to absorb the displacement costs. The judiciary is mandating that efficiency gains from AI be directed back into the workforce through fair internal reassignment, focused skill retraining, or significant compensatory payouts. These rulings are driven by the macroeconomic imperatives of the state rather than just individual labor disputes. Political leadership relies on performance legitimacy, the implicit agreement where the state provides economic growth and employment security in exchange for social order. Urban youth unemployment has reached severe heights recently, creating significant pressure within the labor market and threatening this established legitimacy. The courts operate as a macroeconomic shock absorber. They prevent the sudden creation of a highly skilled, entirely displaced class of unemployed professionals who could threaten social stability. This fear of displacement has historical weight. In Wuhan, protests from taxi drivers against Baidu's autonomous robotaxi service forced the government to freeze the expansion of autonomous vehicles. Even as the state pursues global leadership in AI, it prioritizes local stability, enacting regulatory speed bumps the moment the human cost of automation threatens social cohesion. The AI Plus initiative targets 90% integration across key industrial sectors by 2030 to sustain GDP growth as the working-age population shrinks. This graph plots the state's resolution to the tension between innovation and labor. The aggressive AI adoption curve in the 15th Five-Year Plan is matched by a strict labor stabilization plan. Corporate HR practices are shifting towards mutually beneficial transition practices. This includes mandatory upskilling pathways and formal employment risk assessments required before deploying large-scale automation. This transition introduces the practice of skill distillation, where the workflows and decision-making data of experienced employees are recorded to train their digital replacements. The state's framework requires companies to manage the human-AI economic transition as a core business function. This judicial intervention contrasts with the United States, where at-will employment leaves workers to bear the risk of automation on their own. It also differs from the European Union's AI Act, which prioritizes procedural safety and transparency over the prevention of socioeconomic redundancy. China treats the enterprise decision to automate as a choice that carries an unavoidable social debt. In the race for algorithmic dominance, human economic security has become an uncompromising legal benchmark. Under Article 40, a job is a right that an algorithm cannot extinguish.